Thank you, Liz Chen. Thank you all. I'm about to introduce our last poet. We're very honored to have him here. But before that, I just want to really impart a sense of gratitude to you all for being here. And I'm going to get to it because they're actually holding up the band for us. And I see Brendan over there going like, let's go, shut up. Brian Hassett, a few short lines cannot hope to capture what Brian is all about. Words cannot describe this Kerouac scholar, raconteur, and performer par excellence. Bradstock is delighted and honored to have him grace us with his presence. Come and experience Brian, and you will go away changed for the better. Nice. Brian Hassett.
All right. So I wrote this piece called "The Power of the Collective," and Dennis O'Doherty. I think Dennis heard me do this at Lowell Celebrates Kerouac, which happens every October, and thought that it embodied what he's been doing for 30 years at Bradstock. So that was great. So I thought, and he wanted me to come here specifically to do this. So here we go. This is for everybody at Bradstock today, yesterday, and for the last 30 years. Okay, and tomorrow when we pack up. Give me your befuddled masses, your rejection slips, pink slips, verbal slips, all. Knock down the gates, throw open the bars. The artists are having a ball. Teach me, show me, let me in. Challenge me, push me, help me win. Athletes have their team and suits can wear the firm, but making art keeps you home alone, and Bradstock is the place you turn. Solo suffering totally blows, so into the sea you dive, searching for souls who swim like you and act at least vaguely alive. With deep-sea whales you plunge the depths, with freshwater poets you school. With coral reefers you spark the sea, drinking in dreams from the pool. Out of the one grow many, and out of the many grows the one, the it, the the unspoken thing. And from this desire for oneness, togetherness, the artists and from the beat poets to the pranksters to the Lilith Fair songwriters have collaborated, cajoled, and consoled each other into movements and generations. The Beat generation may have never had a single unified voice any more than Generation X does, but their range of harmonies ended up blending into a pretty inspiring choir. And in this supportive group, a loosely defined beat community became a very interdisciplinary affair, as they freely mingled and collaborated with abstract expressionist painters, jazz musicians, living theater actors, playwrights, photographers, cartoonists, dancers, mystics, and poets from other New York schools. In smoking Greenwich Village joints, like the Cedar Tavern, the San Remo, and the Artist Club, something more than ideas were being exchanged. We were sharing the holy light, said composer David Amram, Kerouac's principal musical collaborator and main stage headliner, and the jazz laureate of the generation. The Artist Club was a beautiful get-together run by artists for artists, with talking, philosophy, arguments, and discussion by the hour by serious and brilliant people. And afterwards, we'd all go over to the Cedar Tavern and continue the rap. It was like a floating university. Nowhere is this more visually animated than in the 1959 film Pull My Daisy, the single most illuminating beat collaboration. Narrated by Kerouac's best 28 minutes on tape, captured in early cinema verite by evocative still photographer Robert Frank, playfully scored by the classically trained Amram, who also appears as the boppin' French hornist Mez McGillicuddy, and starring Allen Ginsberg, Gregory Corso, and Peter Orlovsky. This Lower East Side home movie is the only existing footage of the Beats in their prime, other than a few scattered TV clips. Co-produced by painter Alfred Leslie and shot in his canvas-filled loft, featuring painter Larry Rivers in the role of Neil Cassidy, who is sadly imprisoned in San Quentin at the time, with art dealer Richard Bellamy as the Bishop antagonist, and financed by Wall Street libertine painter Walter Gutman. It's a film made by painters about poets, narrated by a novelist. And this same blessing of community has been felt by artists ranging from the high Renaissance in Florence to the also fairly high poetry Renaissance in San Francisco. Most of the groundbreaking geniuses of Florence circa 1500 belonged to some regimented guild or patron stable. So many of the artists like Michelangelo, Leonardo, and Filippo Lippi, along with architects, storytellers, poets, would gather in their own mock confraternities. And one of the more wacky images of art history, picture several of these blazing masters meeting as they did as the Company of the Cauldron for lively drunken dinners around a giant cooking pot in one of their sculpture studios, where they'd begin creating murals, but not with paint, but with chicken legs, sausages, cheese, and jelly. Even though their quarrels were nearly as colorful as their art, never has a generation of artists advanced their media so quickly. Hi, I'd like to introduce you to my friend David. In San Francisco in the 1950s, a community of poets began a similarly inspired coffeehouse collective, meeting and reading in the nooks and bookshelves of North Beach. Embracing the Platonic adage, "to good men's parties, good men flock unasked," the cultural outlaws from around the nation who'd gathered in this traditionally liberal port city were starting to notice the same faces on the same stages night after night. Poets like Gary Snyder, Michael McClure, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, Robert Duncan, Kenneth Patchen, and Rexroth, and assemblage artists like Bruce Conner and Wallace Berman, and filmmakers like Kenneth Anger and Harry Smith, all began enthusiastic crossover disciplinary collaborations. Yeah, and we're breaking society's bird-brained habit of pigeonholing artists. A lush flower garden had burst into bloom, and it wasn't long before the psychedelic paisley ran wild. In a sun shower of day-glow paint, Ken Kesey and his merry pranksters had a great notion to take the collective to an even higher level. Incubating in pools of acid on the edge of Stanford University, Kesey was forming an ever-expanding coterie of authors and intellectuals that would eventually encompass Neil Cassidy, the Grateful Dead, and Cherry Kool-Aid. As intrepid traveler Ken Babbs put it, the pranksters are a collective of that American spirit that has been passed on from the founding fathers through Melville, Transcendentalism, Whitman, Faulkner, the Beats, and zoom into the pranksters, where it took a wild turn of spontaneity in tribal dance, uninhibited jazz, nonsensical word raps, and any other unfettered reaching of the spirit towards unfound freedoms. Ken Babbs. A healthy dose of this prankster ethic came from the pranksterish Dadaists, who were trying to overthrow not only the rigidity of the fine arts in the 1910s and 20s, but civilization itself. By staging pranks in public places like cathedrals in the middle of a service, this gang of offbeat artists and authors had a collective effect on history, rather than simply getting arrested as solo psychos. And that's the great thing. As much as these collectives were happening in the recent past, many are thriving today. From communal hearths like the New York's New Eurekan Cafe and the Knitting Factory to attention-getting rock fests like Lilith Fair, Bradstock, then the Tibetan Freedom Concerts. Groups of like-minded people are still working together for the collective better. It's good for the soul, for one thing. Cheryl Crow told me about joining the Lilith Tour. I mean, it's what religion's based on. That commune, the community, the solace, and the fellowship of people who have a kindred spirit. Whether it's painting the walls with dinner in Florence, or breakfast in bed for 400,000 at Woodstock, coming together stretches the horizon beyond the sum of its parts. And you don't have to be 500,000 strong. As George Harrison put it of his much smaller group, that was the good thing about being four together. Not like Elvis, you know. I always felt sorry for him later because he was on his own. He had his guys with him, but there was only one Elvis and nobody else knew what it felt like. But for us, we all shared the experience. Being together counts, even a collective of two. Supporting someone who is supporting you is the seed of a generation. Here's to 30 more years of Bradstock.
Well done. Well done.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Brendan, for having us here year after year. Thank you, Bria Nisha.